Hey, what's up, everybody? This is the March Madness Selection Sunday reaction show. So I'm Nick DiMartino. That's Ben Cruz. That's Liam, and that is Will Charlton. So how you guys doing today? It's very, very just happened. So we all have a lot of thoughts.
I guess I'll go first. I'm really excited for obviously this tournament. It's the best time of year. Of course, I'm a UConn fan. For those that obviously can see right here, of course, back-to-back national champs. They're trying to go for the three-peat. But obviously, just really excited for this. Great to have you guys on here.
Yeah, it's the best time of year, like you said. Selection Sunday is one of, if not my favorite day of the year. And I want to shout out Greg Gumbel too. Just not hearing his voice today didn't feel the same. It was a really cool tribute they did to start the show. But yeah, Selection Sunday was just always something about it. We're bringing up colleges, so I'm an Illinois guy. Eli and I got a 6 seed, so I'm sure we'll talk about it a little bit. But yeah, this is going to be a lot of fun.
Yes, this is the best. This is the best. The first weekend of March Madness is the best 4 days of sports here, at least. So super excited.
Yeah, it's one of the few times you can just sit around like bums and watch sports all day and not feel bad about it.
Exactly.
That's just remember when you were like a little kid, in school, right? You would go on your laptop and watch games throughout class. Nothing would beat that for sure.
Yeah, and there's obviously like a lot to get to. We had 14 SEC teams that made it.
Yep.
Yeah, 14. I mean, the SEC is just a powerhouse this year in basketball. I think they might have been a better basketball conference than they were a football conference this year.
They probably were. I mean, just look at the representation,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, 14 teams. I never would have guessed that. By the way, St. John's, first time in 25 years winning the Big East.
Pitino,
that was amazing.
Rick Pitino, just an unreal job. He was able to flip that program around. I'm sure Big East over here,
Yeah.
See a lot of big games against St. John's.
To my cap. Hell of a year so far. And, repping the Big East very well this year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Rick Pitino, what he did, he totally turned the program around just in it's only his second season. It's only his second season he was able to turn the program around from what it was 2 years ago.
And they're just going to get better too. I mean, Pitino, obviously the NIL, right? There's going to be a lot of recruits that he's going to be able to get in because now he has a draw of all these talent. Of course, guys like RJ Lewis, Zuby, obviously, down low. This is going to be a really, really tough out for sure. This is going to be very Tony Bennett, Virginia vibes. They don't score a lot offensively, but they want to play like a defensive, low type of game, and they find a way to pull these type of games out. So I really expect them to be a team to watch for sure in the tournament.
Yeah, I mean they're playing Omaha in the first round. I don't know a single player on Omaha.
Shout out to the Mavericks. First time ever dancing. That's it's kind of been a fun story. How
they're called the Mavericks too.
Yeah. Yep.
Are they going to trade their best player?
That would be pretty blockbuster if they did.
The thing with St. John's is I think that they're a really good defensive team. They might be the best defensive team in college basketball, other than maybe Tennessee and Houston. But I do worry about their offense a little bit. They don't have a lot of good three-point shooters. I guess it doesn't matter as much in college as it does in the pros because there's a whole lot of teams that don't have any good three-point shooters that are in the tournament. In fact, I'd probably say I'd venture to guess it's probably most teams in the tournament. But their defense is great. Other than RJ Lewis, they don't really have any good three-point shooters. Zuby is great. He's a great rebounder, great defender. I'm worried about Zuby with foul shooting. I mean, I think the biggest problem with St. John's is going to be their three-point shooting and their foul shooting. If they lose at some point in the tournament, that's probably. I have a feeling that might end up being their downfall. Would be the three-point shooting and the foul shooting.
Well, I mean, we take a look at, what they've done this year. I mean, they're shooting 30.4% from the field, or from 3-point, that is. And, they haven't been a team that's really relied on the 3-point ball that much. I mean, they're just so dominant getting to the hole and everything like that. And they also beat you defense. I mean, they're one of the best defensive teams in the country as well. I mean, it's going to be very interesting, like matchup based and everything. A team that, and I'm sure we'll get to this, a team that I think if St. John's does meet them, they probably won't beat them is Texas Tech. So, and they get 2-3 matchup in the Sweet 16.
Yeah. And there's obviously, first of all, I do want to acknowledge Greg Gumbel. Rest in peace to him. It's the first selection show that we've seen without Greg Gumbel.
Didn't feel the same. Just didn't feel the same, man.
Yeah. I mean, I still always enjoy the selection shows. It just felt like something was missing a little bit without him.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
It felt last year too without him. Also,
what's that?
It felt really weird without him last year too.
Well, because that was a complete out of nowhere situation. Like, where's Greg Gumbel? We had no idea what was going on, and then we found out he was dealing with some personal issues. They said at the time, and it's like, oh, that's not good to hear. So then obviously we get the tragic news a couple months ago
for him.
Yeah.
But it's just really, really sad. I mean, I was going back and I was mostly watching CBS, and I went back and forth between CBS and ESPN, mostly CBS. Yeah, it just felt a little weird. I don't know if weird's the right word, just sad, if anything, like something's missing. All right. Just now to get into the bracket itself, you guys have any surprises in this particular bracket?
UNC, I think them kind of being like a late team. I know they played Duke obviously 3 times this year. They were pretty competitive, I'd say, for most of them, but that pretty much just tells me that the bubble there was just so many teams, and one team was going to get shafted. It was just kind of the way that things were going to happen. So I'd say them, and I guess Indiana. I mean, Indiana not being in, I guess, to a degree, but they also had a couple games this year that they really blew away. So it also doesn't surprise me. But definitely UNC for sure getting in.
Yeah, that seems to be everybody's big surprise. I don't know how much. I mean, I guess it's true that they probably weren't deserving. I wouldn't say I'm surprised that a big name program like UNC got in when maybe they shouldn't have. I don't know if you guys remember, but it was maybe it was probably I think it was 7 or 8 years ago when Syracuse somehow snuck in. When they probably weren't really deserving, and they ended up making the Final Four.
That's right. Yeah.
So I guess you never really know. I mean, a whole lot of UNC fans wanted Hubert Davis fired. I guess he has a chance to redeem himself a little bit. I mean, just going off on a tangent, if you look at Duke and UNC, both of them lost their head coaches. Their previous head coaches that they've had for many, many years. And Duke, it seems like their new John Shire filled Coach K's shoes a lot better than Hubert Davis did filled Roy Williams' shoes. I feel like UNC fell off a lot more than Duke did after Roy Williams retired.
Well, it also helps a lot when you get Cooper Flagg and Con Knipfel as recruits, but
Yeah, I mean, Duke probably has recruiting in that region on lockdown, I guess. But I mean, UNC is not they're also a big brand, so it can't.
Yeah, but UNC was 1/2 away from winning the national title the year after he retired, though, too.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, and Hubert's first year, they were. They beat Duke to get there. So.
Yeah, that's true. Well, that was 3 years ago, and then that was when Kansas finally won again. And yeah, but overall though, I just comparing those two programs, I guess sometimes you got to give head coaches a chance. Sometimes it just takes a little bit of time for them to turn the program around. And it's not like they fall. I mean, we've talked about it, Will, on the podcast on Forever Power 5. about
Yeah.
like programs that just change head coaches and the team
Mhm.
just falls off completely. So, and I wouldn't say that was exactly the case at UNC, but we do see that a lot, especially in football. I mean, you look at a team like Oklahoma, and that happens all the time. Not to make it about football, but you get the point. Yeah. So in terms of surprise, yeah, I guess it's almost like cliche if I say that my biggest surprise was UNC, but I would say it kind of was. I would say my biggest surprise, because ever since they lost that game, since they lost to Duke, I kind of thought that they just didn't have a chance. I thought that itself just kind of ruined their chances at making the tournament.
1-12 in quad one games. I mean, I just don't get how they sneak in over Indiana, who had 4 quad one wins. And also, they were talking about this on the selection show that Indiana did not have North Carolina had a quad 3 home loss against Stanford, and Indiana did not have a loss about below quad 2 the entire year. So I'm just not really too sure how you measure out those resumes and pick North Carolina over Indiana. I know North Carolina has 3 or 4 more wins than Indiana did, but I don't know. But real quickly, I'll touch on a different surprise. Michigan winning the Big Ten earlier today against Wisconsin and getting a draw of arguably the best mid-major team in this tournament, UC San Diego. Awful draw for Michigan. They kind of got hosed here. Like, how do you reward a team who just won a major power conference tournament, had to win 3 games in 3 days to do so against Wisconsin and Maryland, who's really good, and also a really good Purdue team. And you reward them with playing UC San Diego? Poor Michigan.
Yeah, wait, I'm looking at them and where are they? I'm looking at the bracket right now.
It's a 5-12. It's a 5-12.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, if anything, I was sort of. I mean, if you want to talk about surprises, I didn't expect Michigan to win the Big Ten.
Neither did I.
I didn't expect. I was. It seemed to me. All right, Arkansas versus Kansas. Comments from Jack Braun. Arkansas versus Kansas is going to be so amazing. Calipari versus Self.
I love that matchup.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, you know what would really be amazing is Arkansas versus Kentucky. That would be amazing because that would be like if it was football, I'd call it the Calipari Bowl. That I'd really like to see.
Crazy.
What's that?
The storylines for that would be crazy, and you also have Rick Pitino and the Providence region. I mean, shit, if the tickets weren't so pricey, I would trek my way over to Providence just to see legendary coaches going at it because that would be absolutely crazy. But yeah, that region itself, I think, is going to be arguably probably the top, at least to me, the top region to watch.
Yeah, and potentially Calipari for St. John's in the second round with Calipari versus
That's
Pitino.
awesome. That's awesome to think about. I mean,
that too. Two legendary
even if it's Bill Self
head coaches.
Even if it's Bill Self playing Rick Pitino, I mean, it'll still be a phenomenal coaching matchup. So
yeah, I'd like to see. I'd really like to see that. Calipari, he's only won 1 title, which it doesn't feel like. He's only won the national championship once at Kentucky. It feels like he's won more. He probably should have, actually. To be honest, he probably should have. And yeah, Kentucky is. There's Kentucky and Alabama, like some of these SEC teams, like Kentucky, just their game, and Alabama actually fits this description the most. I mean, some of these SEC teams in basketball look like Big 12 teams. If they were like in football, like all offense, no defense. Like Alabama and Kentucky have two of the top 3 offenses in college basketball are like Alabama and Kentucky, and neither team plays defense. I think that's going to be the biggest problem for a team like Kentucky. They don't play defense well at all.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
I can get to that later for sure.
Yeah, I mean, by the way, Alabama doesn't play defense either.
No,
their defense is terrible.
Their defense was pretty good last year. They took a massive hit with some guys leaving, so
that's why I don't have them going very far in my bracket right now.
No, but they also they also though they can score a lot of points and they play at a really high pace.
Yep.
So they have like the most possessions of all the teams. Like they're almost like they almost remind me a little bit of like West Virginia under Bob Huggins, a little bit like very fast paced. They have a lot of possessions, but they don't really play much defense at all. And I think that's really going to hurt them because I feel like you have to play both sides of the ball in all sports to really be able to win it all. It's very difficult to not. So Texas should not have been in. They have had a lot of really bad losses all year. Felt like Indiana should have been in over them, over UNC. And
most Texas in quad one then.
Yeah, I disagree with that. Texas was in the best conference all year. I disagree with that.
Yeah.
Texas.
He just beat
Texas
A&M too.
I think if anyone deserves to not get in, it's probably Xavier. It's not because of the fact that they didn't have a solid resume. It's just the Big East, and I'm sure Ben, you could probably concur with this. It just wasn't as strong as it has been this year.
No, it hasn't.
Top to bottom.
I mean, really,
the Big East is almost never really that strong. I mean, historically it has been, but in recent years, there's usually like one or two really good teams. I mean, and in fairness, Villanova has represented the Big East well. I mean, a lot of people used to use in a lot of the years that Villanova was in, people would use the Big East against them. Although they ended up being able to like compete with all of the other, and they ended up doing really well in the tournament. I feel like it happens a lot in football. Like we see it all the time in football, where people use like the conference against teams. Although I don't think it really applies as much in basketball. I don't think it really holds up as much because there's a lot more interconference play between teams. And I think there's often teams that come out of conferences like the Big East that end up really doing well in the tournament. I guess not many people have said that about St. John's really, except St. John's isn't a 1 seed or anything like that. And I mean, I never thought I'd live to see the day that St. John's is going to be a 2 seed. I mean, when's the last time they made the tournament? Like 10 years ago?
I think not recent. I can't remember last time.
I think it was 10 years ago, and they like barely snuck in.
Right.
That was the Rishi Jordan team.
They're always for so long. St. John's has always looked at this bubble team, and finally, I think after years and years of just kind of getting the recruits in, especially now with the coach like Rick Pitino and his resume, like you're going to eventually get in at some point. It was just kind of bound to happen. I mean, obviously UConn, between Calhoun and obviously Hurley. A lot of people were discrediting Hurley. Obviously the hire coming in, and just it's all about talent. And now we're gonna have to take a look in terms of St. John's has the resume in terms of they've had a lot of really good wins throughout the year. They just won the Big East conference championship, and they're both balanced on both sides. I will say their offense, like you mentioned, Nick, is a little bit worrisome, but I think defensively, I mean, we have great guards like Kadari Richmond and other RJ Lewis and others. I mean, with a great coach like that, you're bound to hopefully have a good tournament.
Yeah, and RJ Lewis actually, I don't know how much if you guys watched the game, the Big East final against Creighton. And by the way, St. John's really struggled in the first half, especially in the beginning of the game. St. John's really started off slow. And RJ Lewis scored 29 points, and 27 of them were in the second half. That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
They're a second half team.
He's a stud.
Yeah,
they are. And I saw it. St. John's is a really good second half team, which is obviously a huge advantage. And I also think says a lot about coaching. I think it says a lot about coaching. By the way, you see that in college a lot, not as much in the pros where teams are just drastically different in the first half and second half. I think it says a lot about coaching. And I saw the stat. I mean, I haven't looked into this, but when I was watching the game, they put a stat that said St. John's has this like tied for the fewest first half points. I don't know if that's in the Big East in college basketball total. I don't know exactly what specifically that was in, but I just thought that was kind of interesting. I think Kadari Richmond is great. I think he's a great player. He just doesn't have a jump shot. That's the problem with Kadari Richmond. He just doesn't have a jump shot, which I guess you see a lot in like people talk about the differences in college between college basketball and the college football and the NFL. I think like the biggest difference between college basketball and the NBA is you have a whole bunch of guards who are really, really good, who are considered to be like really good players that just can't shoot. Like you hardly ever see that in the NBA.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this is the college basketball and the NBA have a way bigger disparity in talent than college football and the NFL do.
I actually kind of agree, and I also think it's more visual. I feel like it's more noticeable in basketball than it is in football.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
Like it's more noticeable. You see a lot more teams just like you see a lot more like missed shots and things like that and mistakes. In football, I feel like a lot of times in football, and I mean, in fairness, there's really bad special teams in college football compared to the NFL. But I feel like in football, if you were to just like put college players in NFL uniforms, you would very often just not even know the difference that it's like college and not the NFL.
Yeah.
Like I really feel like that could happen, especially now with like NFL teams play like college systems in some ways. In basketball, it's just way different. Like you couldn't put even like the best team. I remember this is kind of a tangent, but remember like when Kentucky in the season 10 years ago, Kentucky was like considered like the heavy favorites to win it all.
Yeah, the undefeated team.
Yeah, they ended up losing to Wisconsin in the Final Four.
Right.
Such a shame Kentucky didn't win that year because they were such a powerhouse. They should have been able to win. But I remember that there were talks about, and the Knicks were like the worst team in the league at the time. And there were talks of people saying, could Kentucky beat the Knicks?
Never in a million years will that ever be the case.
No, of course not. It's stupid. Considering they didn't even beat Wisconsin. And then Duke ended up winning with Jahlil Okafor. And the funny thing is, if you look at most of those players that were on those powerhouse teams, where are they now? The only one that's anywhere right now is Towns.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only one. If you look at all the star players on Kentucky.
Well, Booker was on that team.
That's true. Devin Booker was on that
team. Booker
team.
Was on that
so
team.
You have Towns and Devin Booker.
Mm-hmm.
And then like.
Because Willie Cauley-Stein isn't anywhere to be found anymore.
Yeah, Willie, I don't know where he went.
The Harrison twins never made it in the league.
Yeah, if you look at all, if you look at all those players, we don't know where any of them are now. Most of them, other than Devin Booker and Towns. Jahlil Okafor. Yeah, Jahlil Okafor was the star at Duke. Whatever happened to him? Remember when Jahlil Okafor? I remember the funniest thing when Jahlil Okafor was on the Sixers in his rookie year. He tried going to a bar and showing a fake ID, but the bouncer recognized him.
That's great.
Willie Cauley-Stein is playing in China. Exactly. Exactly our point. He's playing in China. So that's just reminiscing from a very contemporary topic, Willie Cauley-Stein. So I do want to talk about the one seeds a little bit between Auburn, Duke, Houston, and Florida. My question is, who do you guys think is the strongest of all of these?
It's a tough question. I mean, I think right now, Florida, that's kind of my pick as of right now. Walter Clayton's an absolute bucket. They're very, very athletic. Obviously, if UConn wins, that's who unfortunately we play. But if we're going to have to go far, we're going to have to play the best, which is very fair. Duke, of course, Cooper Flagg, right? Flagg's obviously the best player in the league. Auburn, obviously, Broome is a very, very good player down low, and obviously Bruce Pearl is a very, very good coach. With Auburn's, in the past years, right, they always feel like them and Purdue kind of as the top teams in the past, just never seem to kind of go deep when they're always kind of looked at as a very, very good team throughout the regular season. And then Houston, I think Houston's a very, very good team, right? Very, very good shooting team. So I think a lot of teams are very recognizable in this one here. But I think right now, to me, Florida. I think that's really, to me, they're very athletic and their coaching is very, very good too. So I'm picking them right now.
I completely agree. Florida has, I mean, Shinjilu and Condon are two phenomenal big men. They're both such a presence down low, and Condon can even stretch you out because he can shoot it. And then the combination of guards, like you mentioned, Clayton, you got Elijah Martin, and then Will Richard has been on the tear as well. I mean, those three guards are arguably the best trio of guards in the country on the same team. I mean, Florida is playing some of the scariest basketball right now. I mean, what they did to Alabama yesterday in the SEC tournament. I mean, this Florida team, I think right now is playing the best basketball of anyone out there, and they definitely have the scariest potential of any of these one seeds. Obviously, Duke is right there too, because a healthy Duke with Cooper Flag, who should be back for the tournaments, they're going to be right there. So all these teams are really good though. But I will say Auburn has been concerning me lately. They've been concerning me lately. I don't really know what's going on with them because they lost the game to Texas A&M, they lost the game to Alabama, and then they lost to Tennessee yesterday. So
They're the last four, right? They've lost.
Yep, 3 of the last 4, and then they also lost. I mean, I don't. This wasn't necessarily recently, but they lost at home to Florida. So, you know, obviously they start out the year. What was it, like 22-1, 23-1, and since then they've lost 4 games, and that's in the final stretch. So, it's I don't know. I don't know if Auburn is going to make it to the Final Four. I really don't.
Yeah, Auburn's one of those teams, and in fairness, I think people exaggerate that narrative a little bit a lot of times because I feel like people say that about every team except for like for so many years we heard that every team was like a choking team in the tournament, and like people like talk about it with specific teams without realizing that people say that about kind of like everybody except maybe teams like there's very few teams that one of the few would be like Duke and maybe UNC. Other than those 2 teams, people don't really talk about them that much. It turns out that like there's a whole lot of good teams and it's a tournament of 68 teams and only one of them wins. And that's really all it is, I think. Although some teams are a lot worse with it than others. But I really, what I think is that narrative rings true about all of these teams until it doesn't. You know what I mean? And then they win a tournament and then they win it all one year. And then that narrative just kind of goes away. I think that could be the case with Auburn, although I'm not convinced that that's going to be the case this year. And the reason like,
I don't buy it.
Yeah. I don't buy it because they've lost a lot. They've dropped a lot of games that they shouldn't have and a lot of times in sports, it's just about getting hot at the right time. And I'm not convinced Auburn is hot at the right time.
Well, and here's the thing about that too is they're going to have a really tough matchup in the second round. They got to play Creighton or Louisville. Like the fact that that's an 8-9 matchup, they got to play one of those 2 teams in the second round.
Yeah,
that's
and
tough.
Never know. You never know.
That's tough.
I will say, I mean, they haven't lost. They haven't lost to like. In fairness, in the games that they lost, it was like to Alabama, Tennessee, A&M. So they were like really good teams. It's not like they were losing to like bad teams. Although they kind of struggled against Arkansas, and they all. It seems like they're losing a whole lot of these games in the SEC, and I just don't have any reason to believe that this is just going to stop when the tournament comes around. I mean, Tennessee's a good team, but Tennessee's almost like the St. John's of the SEC. Really good defense. They don't play much offense. Auburn, I expected Auburn to win that game because they play both sides of the ball. They play offense a lot better than Tennessee plays defense. And one thing I really like about Tennessee is that they're very disciplined. Although they're almost like the opposite of Alabama. Like they don't turn the ball over a lot. They don't take a lot of stupid shots or anything like that. They're much slower paced. But overall, I just don't think they have the offensive power that Auburn has. And I just think that from the way Auburn's been playing against the top teams in the SEC, I just don't think they're going to be able to continue with it in the tournament. I mean, to me, my one sneaker team is Houston. I think Houston has a real chance. Now, I understand they play in an easier conference than Florida does, and I think winning the SEC says a lot this year, and how good Florida has been against the top SEC teams. But Houston, there's 2 things I really like about Houston. They shoot the ball really well. They shoot threes really well. One of the best 3-point shooting teams in college basketball, and they play great defense. And they have a 13-game winning streak. They have a 13-game winning streak. So we were just talking about Auburn losing a whole bunch of games at the end of the season. Houston won 13. They're in a 13-game winning streak.
And Kelvin Chance is a phenomenal coach.
Would be my sneaker.
Yeah. Houston's always.
Yeah, I agree about Houston. I agree about Houston. They were in the second best conference, and if I was to rank the 1 seeds, I would go Duke, Houston, Auburn, and then I would put Florida. But I do think that Duke and Houston got the hardest side of the bracket of the 1 seeds.
There's nothing better, too, in the tournament when you have very good defense and very good shooting. Those are kind of the main two recipes for having a very good team down the road. One team, Wichita State from a couple of years ago, right? Very good defensive team, but they can shoot the daylights out of the ball, and they weren't favored for a lot of their matchups, and they went deep because of it. So that's a massive recipe. If you have a great coach, if you have great defense, and you have great outside shooting, sky's the limit.
Yeah, because there's a lot of teams in college basketball that just don't have good shooting, and that kind of puts you ahead.
True. Yeah, no, I think Houston is a team that, I think them and Florida right now are playing some of the best basketball in the country. So that's exciting to think that could be a potential national championship game right now.
Yeah, of course. But usually, that's true. Although usually it's not 2 1 seeds that end up making it.
Yeah, no, very rarely.
It's just so strong this year that it's a legitimate possibility that it's a pretty chalky tournament for the top 3 seeds, in my opinion.
Yeah,
with how strong the top 12 is.
Yeah, I would say so too. Although it seems like that every year, I would say.
Does it though? Because I don't know.
You think it's especially true this year?
Yeah, it really feels that way. Just with how strong the top, especially at the top 8, for instance. I don't know if I see a top. I don't know if I see a top 8 seed falling before the Sweet 16. I don't know if I see a top 8 seed not making out the first weekend, but I guess I got to dive more into that since obviously we're still pretty fresh
every year. To be honest, I think that every year nobody ever expects it to happen.
It's true.
Nobody ever expects it because you just never know. 2 years ago it was I never expected Fairleigh Dickinson to beat Purdue.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no one would ever pick a 16 to beat a 1. No
and
one
Virginia,
would ever do it.
right? They got upset early, a couple years ago, early on.
It was 8 years ago
against Vernon.
7 years ago.
Remember Kevin Harlan with a good type of. That couldn't beat that type of thing
against Vernon. That was an electric call.
Yeah, that made history.
Yeah.
So here's a here's a list of the best odds. Vegas odds for teams to win the national championship. This is according to BetMGM. Can you guys best guess who has the best odds?
Duke.
No.
Duke.
No.
Is it Florida?
No.
It's probably Auburn, right?
Yep, it's Auburn.
Wow.
So I guess they're not listening to what we're saying about Auburn.
Wait, what are you using? What are you using?
BetMGM. It's according to BetMGM.
Because DraftKings has Duke with the best odds.
Well, it's not that much different. It's Auburn's plus 340, Duke is plus 360. This is according to BetMGM. I use DraftKings.
DraftKings has Duke at plus 310, Auburn at plus 380.
Okay. So it's where's Houston on that list?
1, 2, 3, 4 plus 650.
Okay. 650. Alabama, according to BetMGM, Alabama is actually 4th at plus 600, and Tennessee is at plus 1100.
Wait, hold on.
They have a sleeper too.
They have Alabama at plus 600.
Yeah. No. Well, I'm sorry. Alabama is plus 1100.
Even so,
Tennessee is plus 1300.
Yeah,
Tennessee's got better value than Alabama for sure, in my opinion.
You think Tennessee has you're saying Tennessee?
Tennessee's got better value than Alabama for sure.
So you would make, and St. John's is plus 2200.
Yeah.
Kentucky is plus 3500. I don't think Kentucky is really as much of a chance from the way they've been playing.
No, I don't think Kentucky's gonna make it out of the first weekend.
Well, I couldn't believe what I saw the other night against Ole Miss.
Yeah, that was.
they were very lucky to win that game.
Such a weird team. Such a weird team.
And by
Injury
the way,
prone, of course, but weird.
it is so strange watching all of like these SEC matchups in basketball because I'm so used to seeing them in football. Like I feel like I'm watching football.
No kidding. That's similar for me. Usually like the Big 12 and the Big 10 being the dominant, and the Big East, of course, being like the dominant basketball conferences. And then, usually the ACC too. The SEC is just kind of like that power conference of basketball that just happens to be a power conference too, that might produce like 3 or 4 really good teams in a year, not 14 to make a tournament.
Yeah, that usually that doesn't. Usually the SEC is like I think the SEC basketball I've always thought was very fun to watch, but it was fun to watch, but it was noticeably not very good.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like a whole lot
That's
of
probably
SEC.
why it was fun, because it's just like
Yeah. Yeah, like for years, that's kind of how I felt about SEC basketball. Like it's fun to watch, but just they're not that good. It's not really like that anymore. Like a whole lot of SEC teams throughout the years have like it was Kentucky and then maybe Tennessee and then maybe one other team and then everybody else. Maybe Florida some years and then everybody else. And most of the conference had a bunch of really fast guards that couldn't shoot. That's what it was in the SEC most years. But it was always fun to watch. Yeah, according to so I'm looking at hold on a second. I'm on DraftKings now, and I'm looking at Alabama State and St. Francis. Alabama State is favored by 3.5, and North Carolina is favored by 4.5 against San Diego State. They're playing on Tuesday at noon. At noon. That is such a bad time to have a game.
Tuesday? What?
No, those times are wrong. Those times are wrong.
Yeah, I don't think that's accurate.
At the same time. They have both games at the same time. Yeah, those times are wrong.
Yeah, the first 4 is always a night on Tuesday.
Yeah,
I was gonna say I've never seen DraftKings. It says 12 p.m.
Times probably won't be announced until either later tonight or even tomorrow.
I think they typically have them on the night of, but maybe it's just
I'm pretty sure they announced them like late tonight, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah,
once the women's, I think, are done with their selection show.
That's probably what it is. Yeah, because that's about to happen.
Yeah, I figure. Yeah, because but I don't know why DraftKings does that.
What's everybody's sleeper? I mean, I know you could obviously make an argument for a lot of teams, but what's your biggest sleeper team? At least all of you guys to watch out for. I mean, obviously for me off air, I picked New Mexico. You know, in Mexico right now, I think is a 10 or 11 seed, and they just play at a very high level. That conference too gets kind of overlooked as well too, that's kind of a team that I'm at least looking for. But what about you guys?
I'm going with BYU. BYU is a 6 seed. I am a huge fan of that BYU team because they are very dynamic on the offensive end. They're very well coached. It's I mean they've won a handful of good. They beat Iowa State twice this year, and Iowa State's a 3 seed. So like BYU is a team to watch out for on that 6 line. I think as I'm looking at it right now, I got them playing Wisconsin in the second round, and I'm not sold on Wisconsin really. I think they would get by Wisconsin, and then potentially setting up a Sweet 16 with Alabama, where I think they would outscore Alabama. I think BYU has the firepower to outscore Wisconsin and Alabama back-to-back games and make a run to the Elite Eight. So I'm going to keep your eyes on BYU as a 6 seed this year. They were 6 seed last year, got upset by Duquesne, but I don't know. They're playing a tough VCU team, but I don't think VCU is going to be able to slow them down like they like to do to teams.
Interesting. So BYU, honestly, I haven't watched BYU basketball this year at all.
Well, I mean, if you look at the numbers for BYU, I mean, it's pretty impressive stuff. Like they put up numbers in games. I mean, for instance, like if you go back to the game they beat Iowa State on March 4th, they beat them 88-50. They put up 85 in a game against Utah in the regular season. Like they put up 91 against Arizona State, 96 in a win against Arizona. They obviously beat Kansas by, what was that, 34 at home. Like this BYU team is one to really keep an eye on. 81 points per game. shoot 48% from the field, and make 37% of the 3-point attempts. So watch out for BYU.
Interesting. Interesting.
How
about you? You go ahead.
No, sorry. I'll just do it from the gambling aspect. If I was to take teams at value, so I wouldn't take any of the first four for value, but I would take Alabama 17-1. I would take Texas Tech 35-1.
Texas Tech's a good team.
Arizona 45-1, I think, is good odds too. I would take.
By the way, you know that's saying something coming from you.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Well, they didn't. They. I mean, they were good. They went to the. Big 12 championship game and lost to Houston. But yeah, I would take those teams right now as teams that are kind of long shot odds. I mean, I would probably take Duke if I was going to actually think who's going to win. But for teams at long shot odds, I would take that.
I would, for long shot odds. I mean, honestly, I sound biased when I say this, but I think St. John's I would take.
I was about to say that I think whoever wins Kansas and Arkansas, I think they'll beat St. John's in the second round.
Really?
So? Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Is it because of the shooting?
I just don't see it.
St. John's, I guarantee you, if St. John's lose, whatever round they lose in, they're going to lose because they missed X amount of free throws. They are the worst free throw shooting team I think I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, and some players specifically are terrible foul shooters.
I would not even like a joke. I would put in scrubs at some point and start fouling them, and then just sub them out on the free throws.
You know, I think St. John's did get a break on the 7 and 10 line because I think that Kansas and Arkansas are not really teams that they got to worry about too much. Like if there's a St. Mary's Vanderbilt game that would have been the next one, that would have been challenging. Or even if it was the UCLA Utah State game, that would have been challenging. I don't think Kansas and Arkansas pose too many issues. Although Boogie Fland will be back for Arkansas in the tournament. He did just get medically cleared, so that is a huge piece to get back for the Razorbacks.
No, I completely disagree with that because Kansas and Arkansas played in the two toughest conferences in basketball. Kansas was the number one preseason. They have, I think Kansas is really good. They didn't have a good season, but they're playing in the toughest conference. So is Arkansas, and they're playing these like iron sharpens iron. I think I really don't have faith in St. John's. And if St. John's, like for instance, Kansas has Hunter Dickinson, right? If St. John's can't rebound, they'll lose by a lot. If St. John's can't rebound, can't get offensive rebounds, they won't win a game.
Well, they don't shoot. That's been one of their MOs for a while. They're not a very good shooting team. They've been winning a lot of their games via by their defense, and we're going to have to figure out specifically if it's going to come back to bite them because, like you mentioned, Liam, if they don't have a great shooting night, they're going to be going early.
Yeah, and also
it's the case for anyone though, really.
Yeah, well. The biggest problem, I think, with St. John's is that I think they might, given that they're not a good shooting team, it's tougher to play from behind for them. I mean, I know they did it against Creighton because R.J. Lewis just had an amazing second half. I mean, R.J. Lewis is the only guy on the team that can really make jump shots.
I will say, Nick, too, the one thing about St. John's all year, they don't quit. They're a team specifically that's a very gritty type of group. So no matter if they're ahead and they're not ahead, you know for a fact that, at least to me, I don't think that St. John's got blown out once all year. They've been a team specifically that's just, it grinds it out. And for a coach like Rick Pitino, I mean, even if they're not shooting great, they have a lot of games like this. They either are right there or either they win, they pull it out, or they come up short. So that's one thing to kind of keep in mind.
That's absolutely true. But, that works very well until it doesn't. So you just, I don't want to get my hopes up too much. I mean, honestly, I haven't really put much thought into it in terms of like the odds of in terms of odds. I mean, as much as I like the St. John's team, there's a whole lot of teams that they would be underdogs against, and a whole lot of teams that I would pick to win against them. To be if I'm being completely honest, And, I mean, crazier things have happened. 16 seeds have beaten 1 seed, so crazier things have happened. But if St. John's played a team like Alabama, Auburn, Florida, a whole bunch of SEC teams, I would pick those teams to beat St. John's. Even if St. John's ends up playing a good game, those teams might just be too tough. But yeah, what you're saying is true. Like they don't quit like that. Certainly, like that's why they're a good second half team. It's just that it's not that they can't play from behind. It's just that they're not built very well to play from behind because they're not a good shooting team. And if we're just going further down with the odds, Michigan State and St. John's are actually tied at plus 2,200.
Yeah.
Won it all. I mean, that's actually, if I were to pick between St. John's and Michigan State, this is just according to DraftKings, if I were to pick between St. John's and Michigan State, I would probably pick St. John's. But I guess Michigan State isn't too bad either. What do you guys think of a team like what do you guys think of a team like Maryland? You think Maryland has much of a shot?
I love Maryland.
You love Maryland. All right.
I love Maryland, but they're in the toughest bracket to be in because if they match up against Florida in the Sweet 16, they will not win that game.
Yeah, I'd have to agree.
Maryland has Maryland has no, you're good. Maryland has their starting 5 combines for the most points in the entire country. The Crab 5. I love that name. I've unfortunately watched Maryland beat up on my Fighting Illini twice this year. And Maryland, I'm shocked they lost to Michigan yesterday. They were my pick to win the Big Ten tournament. A lot of people are saying that Grand Canyon is going to give them some trouble. I don't see that happening at all. I think they're going to easily get by Grand Canyon. Then they'll have they won't have too much trouble with either Memphis or Colorado State in the second round. I think Maryland is so deep. I mean, the 3 guards, Miguel, Gillespie, and I'm blanking out the other guy's name right now, but and then Derek Queen and Julian Reese are 2 phenomenal big men down low. I think Maryland right now, if they were in a better bracket, if they have like a matchup against like an Auburn or like it's so tough. I don't see them beating Florida in the Sweet 16, but I do really like Maryland. If there was a team who was going to bounce Florida early, it would be Maryland, in my opinion.
Yeah, from their bracket, I hate their odds are 40-1. I think they should be from the bracket they're in. Their odds should be way higher than that. But I don't know. I think GCU could give them a game in the first round, and then you play Memphis. And then they play Florida. So yeah, I would probably have them out in the second round of the Sweet 16. But I mean, they're a good team, and they obviously played in a really good conference. But yeah, I think they like Will said, they just got such a tough bracket. Even to get to Florida, it would be tough. And then, I still think Texas Tech is really good. Yeah. Yeah. And then Texas Tech is good. I mean, yeah, I just think I don't see them getting out of that bracket at all.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a difficult. Yeah, it's certain. Yes, Maryland definitely got a difficult. Who would you guys say had like the easiest road? If you
the easiest road,
has the easiest path.
It's probably Duke. It's probably Duke, in my opinion.
Oh no, I don't know. I disagree with that. I would take
Florida.
Probably Florida or
Florida.
Auburn, maybe.
Well, Florida.
No, I think Auburn actually.
Yeah,
Auburn.
Well, Florida, assuming they beat Norfolk State, they play the winner of UConn and Oklahoma.
1 versus 8. You never know. Those are always tough ones.
There are some crazy teams on this 8-9 line this year, man. I mean, Houston's probably got to play Gonzaga in the second round. That's crazy. I mean, obviously UConn, Florida. Even look at like Auburn, like I mentioned, you got to play Louisville or Creighton, which would be pretty tough. And then what's the other one? Well, that's what I'm saying. Like Mississippi State or Baylor is not like that's like I feel like an atypical 8-9 matchup.
I absolutely love when it comes to upset in terms of seeding the 5 versus 12 matchup. Those are at least to me, like for some odd reason, there was some guy, I don't know if it was for the 5 versus 12. It was one of like the 5 versus 12 or like, 6 versus 11 or something. But like, the lower seed specifically is about 500 against the higher seed when it comes to that. So that's really, I'm looking at Michigan, UC San Diego, right? For example, of the team. UC San Diego, I'm picking them. And it's not because specifically they're the lower seed. It's just sometimes when it comes to seeding, it doesn't always mean the top seed is the better type of team, right? It's just kind of in terms of momentum and kind of how you feel about it. I mean, Yale's the 13 against the 4 at Texas A&M, and Yale won last year. They went far, and they were a very low team. So it all comes down to really your coaching and the momentum more than anything, outside of just the physical team itself.
I have a quick question. Was someone injured on Memphis at all?
Yeah. He's a big piece of their team. What's his name? That's a big question mark on if he plays against Colorado State. Too.
It's not Hagerty, right?
Colorado State
No,
right now.
Hagerty.
DraftKings has Colorado State as DraftKings has Colorado State, which is a 12. Memphis is a 5 as a 4-point favorite.
This is irking me. Then memories. Tyrese Hunter. Yeah, Tyrese Hunter's been out.
Yeah,
and that's a huge loss for them. If he's not playing against
Colorado's the favorite.
If he's not playing against Colorado State has won 10 straight games, including winning the Mountain West tournament. So I think I'm personally picking Colorado State to win that game of the 12-5 matchup. And also, Ben, I don't think you mentioned this, but an 11 seed has beaten the 6 seed at least once in every tournament since I think the field expanded to 68.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
So Isaiah says, I'm feeling Florida winning it all. The Gators can score a lot and are very good defensively, and I love their coach Todd Golden a lot. He's so innovative, and watch out for him to be him to the NBA soon.
Agreed.
Yeah, I mean,
point.
From the way Florida's been playing, I would say they certainly could win it all.
Mm.
They certainly
They're
could.
my pick. They're my pick.
They're not my pick.
Who is? Yeah, I was just going to say real quick because he mentioned that the guy might go to the NBA. I just wanted to say Ben's not going to like this, but what a mistake Danny Hurley made by staying at UConn and not. Right now, he would have been coaching LeBron and Luka, and instead he's probably going to go out in the first or second round of the NCAA tournament.
I mean, Liam, we could agree to disagree. I think one thing is that a lot of his family is from the Northeast. He's obviously getting paid crazy amount of money within campus. I understand that if you're going to the NBA, you're going to the NBA. It's obviously it's massive. I also personally don't think that, the Luka Doncic trade came out of absolute nowhere. I think that was more of a,
no, yeah, it's hindsight, yeah.
Yeah. So, I understand, obviously UConn isn't as strong as in past years, but I think when it comes to just recognition, I mean, when you look at the Western Conference, I don't want to go too off, tangent here, but the Western Conference is very, very loaded, right? When you look at Dan Hurley specifically, do you feel like you get more recognized right now currently still in college or in the NBA? Because
NBA.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I mean, I think specifically UConn also too doesn't really have that next coach in line as also. I think that he feels like right now that he could still be the guy for the long term there. So I can understand. I would have loved him to go to the NBA. I mean, I'm a Celtics fan too, so I'm kind of glad.
You wouldn't have loved that you're a UConn fan.
I'm a UConn fan, but also I would have hated to see him go to be a Laker, as a Celtic fan too. So
but here's the question though. Like Liam, you were talking about Danny Hurley, which okay, I understand your point. I also look at it from the other side is like, are the Lakers better off? Like my other question is, we don't have to talk about the Lakers much, but are like the Lakers better off with JJ Redick than they would have been with Danny Hurley? Because I think there's a really good chance that they're better off with JJ Redick than they would have been.
He's been good with them.
Yeah, it's possible.
Mm-hmm.
I just think UConn just has fallen so far from where they were. Obviously, it's tough to win 3 in a row, but
what happens too is when you have starting 5 of lottery picks pretty much the last couple of years. I mean, you just never get really lucky that often.
Well,
right, of course.
The funny thing is that if Danny Hurley had left and UConn had this season that they're having this year, everybody would chalk it up to Danny Hurley leaving. And people would be like, oh, they'd be another contender this year if Danny Hurley had stayed.
I mean, the crazy part is they lost Liam McNeely for a lot of this year, who was arguably one of their better scorers. And, they had obviously the Maui trip around the season. It looked like they were not going to make the tournament. So I give a lot of credit to Danny for, making this team at least be more consistent. Now, they're obviously not as good as what they used to be, and they're probably going to get bounced in the second round. But, I can't be too upset.
Well, you can't be too upset. I mean, you won 2 in a row.
Yeah, that's really tough to do, especially in a round of 64,
I mean, how often, like we were just talking about teams. Yeah, I mean, look at how how many teams have been good for so long that just don't win.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I mean, if you look at a team like Kentucky, we were talking about Kentucky. I mean, like Calipari went 13 seasons in a row 14 seasons without winning anything at all. Since he last won in 2009. And UConn hasn't always been good, but if UConn is the one team that makes the most out of the years that they're very good. Oh, it looks like the tip times might be dropping soon at 8:15.
8:15.
Here's what I know about the tip times. Here's what I know. It's gonna be a really specific time. It'll be like 8:37 or something like that.
9:55 is always the popular one.
I remember Illinois, Iowa State when I was out in Boston last year. It tipped off at 9:42 Eastern time or something like that. Later. I think it was after 10 it tipped off.
Well, don't if you're if you're the last matchup, you don't have to really worry about the next matchup after. But if there's a specifically game that goes in overtime, like UConn in the Big East tournament, the DePaul game against the second overtime game, DePaul Creighton, where Creighton looked like they were dead in the water and they came back from 17 down with about 3 minutes left. I'm like, it'll be typical UConn luck in which they start at 10 o'clock. And it seemed to happen where, the DePaul Creighton game was great, double overtime, but it's thankfully they won that one, but
no kidding.
Yeah.
You ever notice that every year people there's this whole bunch of people that just complain about start times for the national championship?
Yeah.
We hear it we hear it incessantly. Every single year, especially in college. All right, wait, we have tip times. Hold up. We have tip times. 6:40 St. Francis and Alabama versus Alabama State. 6:40 and then
first four. Yeah.
Yep, and then Carolina versus San Diego State tips off at 9:10 on Tuesday.
That sounds right.
Yep. That sounds right.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised it wasn't more specific. And then on Wednesday, Mount St. Mary's and American are playing at 6:40, and Xavier plays Texas at 9:10.
I'll be tuning into that game.
Spiro Ditas, Jim Spinarkle, and John Rothstein. I love John Rothstein. He is a great Twitter follow.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
He is.
I've never heard someone say their own name so much, but yeah.
Yeah. So
he loves his own name, that's for sure.
My favorite tweet from John Rothstein every year, he says, you guys have hobbies. I watch college basketball. That just so hard, man. Just the tweet I always see every year from him.
Yep.
Yeah. I guess I fit that description too, but only for 1 or 2 months out of the year. I
follow this sport ever since it starts in November, man. This is my favorite sport.
Yeah. I don't know. It's certainly not my favorite. College basketball is my favorite sport for a certain period of time. To me, it holds nothing against college football.
No matter what time of year it is, I will always have college basketball on my TV if it's on.
Here's this tweet from John Rothstein I thought was so funny. It says, my neighbor told me yesterday he and his wife are going to Paris today. A good reminder that we're neighbors and not friends for a reason. No trip to the Eiffel Tower is better than UC Irvine in the Big West semifinals. I agree with him. I agree. I would rather.
Hey, UC Irvine had the mini Jokic on their team. This couldn't beat UC San Diego.
Yeah, I mean, also, it's also much cheaper to watch the Big West semifinals than it is to go to Paris. So there is that too.
It's true.
So,
Yeah. So I think we're going to be wrapping up pretty soon. We're going to be wrapping up. This was our March Madness reaction show, Selection Sunday show, which is presented by Playback. You can follow us on social media at ETB Net across social media at ETB Network. You can follow all Empty the Bench shows on YouTube. Watch all Empty the Bench shows on YouTube.com/ETB Network, and you can listen to all Empty the Bench shows on ETBpodcast.com. All right, so that's our stream, and I guess we'll be back next year.
until next
for our
year.
next Selection Sunday show. So see everybody then.